Gotta start.
Ryan, what's up, dude?
Hey, Jeff. Good to see you.
You too, man. I got like I feel good. I feel proud of our new fancy like overlay here on the screen. I played with it a little bit more. I actually changed. My wife was commenting that the teal that I had picked for the color everywhere was like a little too bright, like a little like almost neon to look at. So I changed the color up a little bit. Not that anybody watching this show right now cares about that, but hey, everybody, welcome to the Kessel Chat. Back here for another week with Ryan. Ryan, it's good to have you, dude.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. Really excited to pick up where we left off, talking about Star Wars. So yeah, really excited.
Absolutely. We got a couple of viewers on the show. Thank you guys so much for being here. And if you're joining us for the first time, say hi. If you're not, say hi anyway. And tonight, I posted earlier, we're going to be talking all about the whole idea of a Star Wars story. So the standalones, Rogue One, and the Solo. And Ryan and I are just going to go crazy geek style on what Star Wars story we want to see made next. And there's a lot of them. So we're going to dive into that. But definitely jump into the comments, throw up your ideas, talk to us, add commentary. We'd love to have you guys here. It's so fantastic. So Ryan, I know you have a list of them to go through, and I think I have a far smaller list.
I have a literal list that I came with because I am always consumed with this question. If again, Kathleen Kennedy, I'm here.
You're like, I do take side work. I do get. I'm part of the gig economy. We can do this.
It's totally cool. Like, you put that out there, I'll give you like 2 or 3 hours. No healthcare or anything. Just like I'm happy to get some ideas out.
Just some design thinking. Let's get into a room. We'll do some design thinking. It'll be great. little rosebud thorn. It'll be fine, man.
Sticky note. Yeah,
Oh,
exactly.
dude, totally.
Like, we'll get there. The thing that and we were talking about this right before we came onto the show, but I love this idea. I love that Disney Plus is a thing because now it's not such a huge, like a heavy lift. And there's the cool thing about the Star Wars universe that I've always thought is that you're able to like have this kind of multitude of different things that are available to you. There was originally just the movies, and then as soon as the movie came out, there was the books, and of course there was like action figures, a lot of other merch. But then there was the side movies, like the Caravan of Courage type stuff, which I know that the Unspeakable holiday special. But what's really cool is that as Star Wars has gotten older, and we've talked about this, Jeff, is that now there is all of this really great, like there's series potential. There is books that are out there. I remember for a while, if you really wanted a unique story, you had to go to the comic books.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you wanted to learn about Darth Vader's history or the dark times, as they used to call them, the time between Revenge of the Sith essentially and A New Hope. All of that was in the comic books, or it was in the expanded universe books that you could go pick up. But now you were even talking about this, Jeff, about how it's so nice because some things might not fit in a movie and it might work a lot better in a series. I wanted to ask you, like, what were your thoughts on that? Like, what do you think is that kind of dividing line between like what fits well in a book or a movie versus what fits really nicely now in these limited run series?
Yeah, and you and I have definitely talked about this in the past, and it's something I still feel so strongly about. In fact, my wife and I have had this conversation many times. We've had this conversation. Mm-hmm. It's ever since the idea of like these series, and for me, where it really started off, where I really noticed it in force, was when Marvel brought Daredevil and then Luke Cage and Jessica Jones, especially the Punisher. I'm gonna forget about Iron Fist. We're just gonna put that away for a minute. We're not gonna talk about Iron Fist.
He's gonna sit over here.
He's just there's a whole meme like there's a whole pouty face meme now that's going around when it shows after you watch the Shang-Chi.
The Shang-Chi trailer.
Oh my god, it gave my goosebumps. It was, and right after that, I saw a meme that was like a sad face, Iron Fist sad face, and they're all pouting in these pictures, and I'm like, yeah, that's about right, because that's kind of what he was supposed to be. And anyway,
that said, possible little Easter egg on one of the cars that's driving by really fast. You can see Fist.
Yeah.
And it's unknown if that is Iron Fist. But
that'd be interesting.
My fingers are crossed that they're able to actually kind of rework that property and give us a really cool.
Yeah, I agree.
Future Iron Fist.
I mean, that trailer looks pretty stellar. And Raleigh in the comments, we just had a little addition to our comments there. So yes, Raleigh, we totally agree. Yes, we're just gonna leave him off the list. But so
he's over here.
I was gonna say
but I don't want to digress too many times. But isn't it a wonderful time that we live in that we can just watch trailers? I know that sounds silly, but it used to be kids at home watching. You used to have to go to the theater to watch these things. Now it's like all the time. It's like, oh, I wanted to see a trailer or a teaser or anything else. It's like that Loki teaser. The teaser and the trailer. It's like if they can take some of the magic that they're doing with these series and apply it to Star Wars, I think that's like a perfect match.
I agree. So when those series all came out, that's when I first was like, holy crap, like there is so much more character development that happens, because you sit down and think about it, you're like, they're putting a lot of money. I mean, at the time Netflix put a ton of money into those shows, and it was still objectively a lot of investment in a show. And then you fast forward to The Mandalorian and you watch that and you see all these different shows they put out, and even though The Mandalorian episodes were shorter episodes relatively speaking to like a Jessica Jones episode or whatever, you still get in one season so much more content than you can ever get out of one movie realistically. But more important than that is the ability to slowly develop that character over 10, 12, 13 episodes, or even if it's 8 episodes, it could still work out to be 5.5 to 6 hours of content, and you can go slow. You can let the interactions play out organically. You can let the relationships build up the way they need to, or get torn down the way they need to, or the heated moments between an antagonist and a protagonist not have to be rushed into being. They can happen later on. Like that first season of Jessica, I know this isn't Star Wars related, but that first season of Jessica Jones, where the Purple Man, like David Tennant's character came in, it didn't happen right away. And even when he did, it was just drips in the beginning. And by the time he really became a prominent part of the series, which was like in the second half of the running of that first season, like his impact was felt so much more in general and in specific emotionally than he ever could have been if you just try to throw him into a movie and make him a bad guy. Like it wouldn't feel the same. And I adore that idea, because when you look at like the Star Wars things, a lot of it's been in animated, which is I'm on board with. But I literally just went back and rewatched the last 2 full seasons of Star Wars Rebels to kind of be remembered of like a lot of the concluding story elements there that are amazing, kind of really set up what we're seeing in The Mandalorian now. But then I just rewatched all of season 7 of the Clone Wars. Specifically, I wanted to watch the Bad Batch episodes to be reminded of like how their 4 or 5 episodes played out. And it reminded me like, wow, their show that's going to come out on Star Wars Day, it's going to be so much more interesting. Even though there may be 20-minute episodes, they'll get an entire season. And so all the story arcs can be developed out in these ways that, especially in animated, that you can never do in live action. But then you tangent over to potentially into a live action show like Ahsoka's show, whatever else. It's just, there's all these different ways to do it. And I think what that lets you do is have a movie, have the big blockbuster be for almost the big culmination points of a story, or culmination points of 2 or 3 different story arcs from different places that can come together in a kind of a blockbuster sense that you really want to see on the big screen. You can do it justice on the small screen, but it's more fun, and like it becomes an experience to watch it on the silver screen, so to speak, as opposed to like the series are great at like intermixing a character here and there, but really sort of like just developing the stories out in conjunction with books and comics and things like that.
Oh, I completely agree, and I'll get to some of my ideas here in just a second. But again, this is the agreement hour on the Kessel chat, and to use another Marvel example, I love the comparison that you're talking about with how we can spend some time with a character, maybe an underdeveloped or an underutilized character, like in the Marvel universe, the Scarlet Witch. So much so that she wasn't even referred to as the Scarlet Witch inside of the movie universe. And then we get this unbelievable series that is WandaVision. And what I like about that is all of that character development is happening. We're able to spend all this time with this character before she comes into the Multiverse of Madness, which is the new Doctor Strange movie. And as a huge fan of Doctor Strange, to know, because one, I love all the stuff when they get like the mystic arts. Like I really enjoy that. That's actually part of Star Wars that I really like. It's one of the reasons why I was like, I don't need Mandalorians. I believe in the Force. I'm sorry, not Mandalorians, midi-chlorians. I believe in the Force. I need Mandalorians. The thing that I think is great though is that if you have a series like WandaVision, you're able to spend a lot of time, build up a character, present her conflicts, present her challenges, all the things that are there, and then have them interact with a very established character like Doctor Strange in a really weird setting, which will be the Multiverse of Madness. And now both of those characters are showing up to that movie with stakes. Which means there's things that they want and there's things that they could lose. And that, for an audience member, is great. It's great when you have a story that's being built like that in the background.
I totally agree. It actually, you just said it, and I didn't realize it. I think I've thought about it, but I couldn't articulate it until you said that, which is the word stakes. You get a character whose development arc, their story, and the reason why their kind of the character's reason for being has already been established. You just said it. Now we can legitimately call Wanda's character the Scarlet Witch after WandaVision. Like, she has now been officially established as, we knew she was anyway, but now she's been officially established as that. And same thing with how the Falcon and Winter Soldier is playing out right now with the final season episode tomorrow. But like how it played out yesterday, like the way, we could not have gotten all of that from a movie, and if we did, it would just have been to shove everything in, and it wouldn't have worked well. And I really really love that they're doubling down on that idea. Loki, I think Loki comes next, and then what comes after? So what else comes after Loki? I don't remember, but like there's that ability to expand out and really explore a character's story. I know you and I have talked about the Mandalorian series many times, and we both love it. One of my favorite parts about it, and I don't think we've touched on necessarily, is the ability to also then introduce all these different storytellers and the different directors who participated in the show. Yep. So every episode you can see the touch, you can visually watch and feel the impact of that director on the story that is being told and the way that it's being told in that episode. Because when you watch the behind the scenes where they're all the directors talk to each other about like how they picked those episodes, you can see the influence of each director on how they interact with the actors, which then changes how the actor behaves on the screen, which gives you like almost multiple other stories in addition to the one that's just actually being told in the script, which is amazing to me. Like, and to see what they're going to do with that same concept with the Ahsoka series and others. And I mean, to that extent, to the animated series too, like the Bad Batch, like others like that are going to happen. You have the ability to have all these story arcs that are written by screenwriters, and then you have all these different directors in different ways and that just have all these different impacts on how the emotions come across on the screen. I don't know. I mean, I'm beyond excited about the ideas. No,
I'm right there. And it's funny because it's like there's a comment that's being shared on the screen right now by Raleigh, which I could not agree more with. I actually feel like pulp is the heart of this. Like Star Wars started out as an ode to those serials from back in the day that actually used to catch. They were fast produced movies, very much like comic books. And if there's a thing that happened in the old serials that Star Wars is based on, especially what you see in comic books, is there is a lot of time devoted to two things: the overarching story and then episodic items. And the episodic items allow for a self-contained story that also allows for character development, and also like it lets a character land and it lets an audience or a reader breathe.
Mm-hmm.
And what's funny about that is one of my favorite episodes in the first season of The Mandalorian is The Prisoner, which is when totally in one encapsulated episode that's filled with actors that I absolutely love. And that's like almost a bottle episode. It's shot on a set that's probably as big as my office, it feels like.
Mm-hmm.
It's just white hallways that they're constantly walking through. And it's a great episode. It's great episodic storytelling, and I actually think that that's what Disney Plus is doing right, and what some of these other Plus services, Paramount Plus services are possibly doing incorrectly, which is they focus too much on the arc, on a story arc, and not really recognizing that there is a really good opportunity to do some nice episodic television within a story arc. And if anybody wants a really good primer on how to balance your mythos against your episodes, it's X-Files. X-Files did that incredibly well. And if you want, and a comic book example of that is X-Men. X-Men, and even the Star Wars comic books did this incredibly well. I'll just use X-Men as an example, which is like X-Men had a huge arc called Battle of the Atom. And it was one of my favorite arcs. It's recent. If you ever want to start reading X-Men comic books, go back, read Battle of the Atom. You can get it in ebook. I don't get paid for that. I'm just saying it. And it's great because it's got small episodic elements which allow you to land. And so it's just like The Mandalorian, gives you those moments to actually pause. I feel like, Jeff, if we don't get to the list of the things that we wanted to recommend, it's like clickbait. Get 5 ideas for this. Soon we'll be saying, and then we'll get to that. But first, let me talk to you about audible.com.
That was a beautiful segue, by the way. That was like fantastic. Like, did you rehearse that? I don't. Anyway. Why don't you go first? Okay, so you go first. You throw out your first idea, and then I'll follow you, and we'll see how many we can get through tonight.
This is an idea that I had back when I watched episode 1 in 1999. And it's something that I even tried to convince my brother to try to shoot a movie of. What I think, though, would be a great series. And I know that it's a topic that's been covered in the comics, and I know that it's a topic that's been covered as well in some of the series, the Clone Wars specifically. And that is my idea for, I would love to see a series called Prophecy. And this would be an entire series dedicated to the prophecy of the chosen one, because there's three great mentions of it. There's actually several great mentions of it, but the first of which is in episode 1, where Mace Windu, Qui-Gon's like, I got a virgins, encounter a virgins of the Force. It's this child, I think he's been conceived by the Force. And Mace Windu says, well, you're thinking of the prophecy of the one who'll bring balance to the Force. You think it's this boy? And then in episode 3, Yoda says something pretty profound, because Obi-Wan says, well, isn't he the chosen one? And Yoda says, yes, but a prophecy misread it might have been. I'm paraphrasing. I think that was the way Yoda said it. And I would love to see some time dedicated to prophecy, to seeing how this prophecy comes about, to see it through the centuries of a pre-republic, a high republic a version of that, because I feel like that's a lot in the stories that we tell now, like the Noah's flood and how that appears in multiple religions and cultures all over the world. That obviously some type of flood happened, because it's a story that is shared among countless peoples and tribes, walks of life, everywhere all over the world, that there's this reference to a great flood. I would love to see how an idea becomes prophecy, how prophecy becomes
you know what? When you mentioned this earlier, it didn't quite click on me how many times that has been, the prophecy was touched on even in like the Clone Wars when that was running. I don't really like to use the words gods in this context, but like Palpatine refers to them as the Mortis gods.
Yes.
He's the first one to ever say it like that. In the Clone Wars, they're just referred to as the Father, the Son, and the Daughter. But in the miniseries that happens within season, I think it's like 4 or something of the Clone Wars. I don't remember exactly. If anyone who's watching knows, post that in the chat. Let us know. I don't remember what season that was. But when Obi-Wan,
great series.
Yeah, when Obi-Wan, Anakin, and Ahsoka are drawn to this hidden planet Mortis, and they meet the Father, the Son, and the Daughter in this Force nexus in this special weird planet. It's in that process, and I didn't dawn on me till just now that what the Father was really trying to do is he identified that Anakin was somehow, I mean, that's basically where you hear for sure that even though Yoda said it, it's basically like a retconning of Yoda from Revenge of the Sith to a degree, because even though Yoda said like, yeah, prophecy may have been misread, it's like, well, no, we know it was, because the Father clearly, in Mortis, clearly believed that Anakin was the this nexus point of the Force in a central being, because he drew him to there to try to take over for him, because he was dying and wanted to take over his role to keep balance between his son, pure representation of the pure dark side, and his daughter, pure light side. I just don't know that happens. Like, yeah, there was a firm belief of that, but to your point, it could, even he, a pure like balance, like he represented, the Father represented the balance in the Force, like he manifested in a single being the balance in the Force. He believed Anakin was this. Could all of them have been wrong? Again, it's like prophecies are not, they're all like this massive matter of perspective, or like your viewpoint on a situation.
Oh, are you telling me that truth is held by your own point of view, as Obi-Wan would say?
From a certain point of view.
From a certain point of view. I've thought this would be a really great story to tell. Also, again, I'm mixing in another group. If anybody follows Avatar, which is, I'm not the movie, but the television series with Aang. I'm a big fan of Avatar. I'm a big fan of The Legend of Korra. There is a pre-story to Aang, which is the Avatar Kyoshi. And the Kyoshi comes late as an avatar because someone else is thought to be the avatar, and then they're found out to be false. And I love this idea of really exploring what prophecies mean in a culture
Mm-hmm.
like the one that we see in Star Wars, and how you can have people that are awaiting in a very Arthurian type way a once and future king. Often that is how prophecies start: is someone saying, "I will one day return." Kahless the Unforgettable, if you want to rob from Star Trek, for example, where it's you have someone who's saying, "Look to that star, look to that day, and one day I will return." I love this idea to be able to explore something like that in a series, but also I'm a big fan of time shifts. I really like when you can show something in one era and then show what it's like in a future era, to show the effects of something as it is rippling through time. And so I think this would be a great series. I don't think it's a movie, because it doesn't have the weight from a plot perspective,
Mm-hmm.
unless you want it to be a fight for a prophecy. But then I think it works great as like a six episode series, and I'm happy to write the first draft. I keep saying this on this podcast. I'm happy to do the writing for Spec.
So if anybody
So
watching, by the way, knows Kathleen Kennedy has a line into Dave Filoni or John Favreau, just drop it. Just to drop a quick note. It's not a big deal. Just drop a quick note. We've got some notes for them. It's not
Ryan,
just no big deal.
we caught you on the Kessel chat, and we were really impressed by this. We heard you say Spec, and we were like, we're on board. So yeah. But Jeff, I know you've got an idea. I know that I've taken up a bunch of time with my prophecy.
No,
idea.
dude, no. I love that idea too, because it's got this very sort of like existential vibe to it, where you can really get into the idea that, as you said, cultures, all cultures and religions and groups on this planet are influenced by prophecy, or include some form of prophecy in their canonical backstory, so to speak. Yeah,
Yep.
just taking that verbiage for a minute. It's just a thing. So how, like, and I love that it is included in Star Wars, and it's such a good point because there's so many different points of how that prophecy could have been repeated or seen in a different way. And how do you know? Like, how would you ever know? And that's the hard part about the idea of prophecy.
Yes. Exactly.
So yeah, it just got my noodle cooking a little bit on that. I like it.
No, and I'm a big, like, I like to mix things with a review of religion as well, because I think art is a great reflection of religion, and the two things actually really help one another out. And so I love examination of religion in like science fiction like that. I think you see it really done really well in things like Star Wars. I think you see it really done incredibly well in things like Star Trek. I would love to really push the medium forward. I know that's risky, but it's I think it's great because you can have a series really have something to say about what we think of when it comes to things like prophecy and faith.
Mm-hmm.
Faith is something that can make a difference, or even how you can misplace your faith sometimes.
Yeah. Totally agree. And so it's kind of speaking of like the short form series, we've talked about the forthcoming Obi-Wan series a little bit. There's not many details available at the moment, but this kind of is a tangent because so far as we know, the Obi-Wan series is going to be a one and done. Like it's going to be one season and then that will be it. We'll see if it goes on. I kind of hope, to be honest, that they actually do just one. As much as my inner and outer geek, Star Wars geek are like, oh my God, give me all of the Obi-Wan. I also recognize that like there is a benefit in having a sort of like, you've just been dropped into a story that's already happening, and you're like, you walk through. It's sort of like, I don't know if you ever read Stephen King's The Dark Tower series. So in The Drawing of Three, in the third book, when he's on the beaches and there's the three doors and he opens a door, he's just walking into a world that's already happening, and he pulls somebody through, but then he comes back to where he was and he goes to the next door and the same sort of thing happens. That's how I think of like the Obi-Wan story of like, you're just on a beach and there's a door and you open that door and look, you get to experience for 10 episodes a story that's already playing out, and then when it's done you can just close. It's like the story's just going to keep going, and yeah, you could keep watching it, but that turns it into sort of like almost demeans it and puts it into like the Truman Show sort of world, and I don't like that. I like the idea of like we're just getting a snapshot in time that just gives you a taste of how this person here became this person over here, and it kind of leads into the idea I had The only name I could come up with, because I'm super not creative at all when it comes to naming things like this, but I thought of this thing called the Oddballs. And the reason I thought about that is it could be sort of a running series that different groups are featured in each series or each season. The one I picked as the first season, they didn't really have a name for the group, but in the book, I think it was a Claudia Gray book. Maybe I'm wrong. Aftermath. No, I think she was Lost Stars. Anyway, the Aftermath series that came out several years ago, around the time just after the Force Awakens. It was like, I think it was part of the road to the Force Awakens when that released. It was a trilogy, and in it there was like several different groups that it kind of followed around, and one of them was where we meet the character Snap Wexley. He's in some of the other movies. He goes by Temin, or his name is Temin. It goes by Snap, and this group forms of a bounty hunter named Jazz. I've got the names on the side here. A ex-Imperial intelligence officer named Sinjir, John Burrell, who's like a Imperial or a New Republic or a Republic heavy gunner fighter guy, and then Snap's mom, Nora, who's like looking to find her husband that was kidnapped by the Empire a while back. She's trying to find him. She runs into these people who randomly kind of help her. They kind of form a group, and then she finds her son. And she had left her son behind when her husband was kidnapped. She leaves her son behind to go join the rebellion, and leaves this like 12-year-old kid behind to be watched by somebody else so she can go fight with the rebellion. She comes back to find him, 16 years old or what have you. He's got this awesome droid character, and droids are always like such a like polarizing thing in Star Wars, but this awesome droid character he calls Mr. Bones. It's a B1 battle droid that he is like, it's a little cuckoo bananas, and he's reconfigured to be basically a murder droid. So it's super cuckoo and funny, but it makes really like dark jokes about ripping people's arms off. But if Snap ever gets in trouble, Mr. Bones comes in and just like tears the place apart and destroys everybody. But then afterwards, like, let's go have a good time. And they form this weird little group with each other where they're like, they don't like each other, and they kind of, because it's kind of a young adult novel, so they snip at each other, but it's great to watch because they actually follow each other through the entire story. And at the end of it, they kind of just go off together. Nora, I think, stays behind, but the group goes off together, and they're going to be sort of like a group, sort of like the Ghost, Harrison Dula's group in Rebels, like a family that's dysfunctional, all these things, but it's interesting. And I liked the idea of that because it could be a type of series where you follow a small group of people who, in this case, a bounty hunter, an Imperial intelligence, or what do they call it? ISB? The basically the spies, all those guys. A Republic fighter, and then a mom and her son. And her son, she doesn't have a good relationship with anymore. Like a very dysfunctional group of people. But it's cool because you could have it as like they run for a season and you watch them for a bit to see how they kind of function while the Empire is crashing and the Republic is starting to become a thing and everyone's trying to find their place. But then when that season ends, you could find another small group of people like a Cassian Andor or whoever else is partnered up with somebody for a bit, and you follow them for a bit. Cool. Then we step out of their story and then step into someone else's story. And I like it I like the concept of it for a couple of reasons. The main one is no Jedi. And I love the Jedi. I love the Force. I love everything about that. But just as much, I love the real people aspect of Star Wars. When real individuals, the real humans in the galaxy, or I should say just sentient beings in the galaxy, are affected by things, it makes it feel more real. Like you feel like you can actually connect more with those, at least I do, more with their stories because it's a real person dealing with a real problem that I can relate to. Like, holy shit, yeah, that person's farm is being taken away by the Empire and this thing happened. Like, I'm not a Jedi. Like, it's very existential and that's cool. I love it. But there's almost an ecclesiastical part of the Jedi that sometimes makes it a little distant and a little too fantastical. Whereas the real people who are dealing with these problems, you can identify with that. You can see yourself, even though they're not true. As Neil Gaiman would say, every fiction work, every good story has to have your truth in it. Even though it's completely made up stuff, your truth has to be a part of it because that truth that the author puts into it is what you connect with. It makes you go, oh, I can totally see myself in these things. And you can find whatever those metaphors or symbols mean to you. And so being able to find like multiple groups, one a season that you could follow around gives you a whole other set of emotions and things as a person that you could connect with. And you get to see how all these conflicts affect the sort of like quote unquote real people in the galaxy at any given point in time.
Right on. I really like that. I love the the characterization of being of the series, of being able to switch from season to season. I actually wish more, and by the way, like that's an old like Star Wars Dark Horse comic type of thing. Like in the old Star Wars tales, you would get like two or three or four stories that were all in one comic book, and it was really something like unique and something really great to have, because you could actually see like a lot of different characters and a lot of different stories like all coming together. So I would love to see something
Uh-oh.
like that. It's like some of these like Disney Plus episodes, even for or Disney Plus series for Marvel, I would be okay if they were just a single season and then we're done. So yeah, like I really like the idea of and by the way, I totally agree with Raleigh. You may be a Jedi, Jeff. I really like this idea of having kind of rotating stories, and also I love the oddball name, because that's also a character inside of Star Wars. But I love the oddball name because it could be a group of anybody being put together, and I like that because one of my favorite plays is Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead, and it's all of the stuff that's happening around a story that you can then see. And I think what's great is that you could really spend some time with people who the guy who was the original Red 5, for example,
Mm-hmm.
who couldn't make it onto the X-wing, and
Red
Luke
5
is
standing
in that
by.
X-wing. Exactly, and that guy's like, hey, wait a second, like, why is this guy Red 5 now? And I know that there's like a lot of different comic book jokes about that. There's an old comic book about a guy who was sick, and that's why he couldn't be Red 5. But I like that idea because you could really change it up, and you're it's like you're briefly with these people for a small story arc, and I really like that.
You know what you're making me think, when you made the comment about like following or in that play, seeing all the other stuff that's happening without seeing the actual main story that you thought you were coming to watch. It reminds me of that TV show The League, when all those friends are they're in this fantasy football league, but basically the show has nothing to do with their actual fantasy football league. It's just about all the shenanigans that happen when they're not doing the league stuff. Like, I watched that, and when I first saw the trailer for that years ago, and it's totally not Star Wars, but I was like, I'm not watching a show. Someone was like, it's about a fantasy football league. I'm like, dude, you are preaching to the wrong audience. Like, that is not I'm not going to watch sports TV, dude. And then finally, some years later, someone said, no, you need to go back and watch it because it has really nothing to do at all with their actual fantasy football league. And then, of course, my wife and I watch it, and I'm like, oh, these are just people who are idiots, and it's fantastic. I'm like, okay, I'm in. I'm sold.
Well, I will 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon this, and I will say that show actually has a really cool Star Wars connection. So on The League, there are two characters, Andre and Rafi, and they're
oh my God, yes.
Paul Scheer. They are played by Paul Scheer and Jason Mantzoukas, respectively, two of my favorite people that run a podcast called How Did This Get Made? And I know I've brought this up in other episodes that we've talked about previously, but there is an episode of How Did This Get Made? I think you get it off the Apple iTunes, and it's called it's their review of they review movies. They wonder how did they get made, and they kind of make fun of them. And one of them is The Lawnmower Man.
Oh my God! Oh my God! Yes!
Which
wow!
A crazy movie. And at the beginning of that episode, Jason Mantzoukas, Paul Scheer, and Neil Casey all talk about their experiences going to see episode 1, and it is hilarious.
Okay, I need to go back and listen to that then. Okay.
Yeah. I feel like I can do 6 degrees of Star Wars like all the time.
You're really good at it.
A great Star Wars story. I will remember it, and I just remember that episode, and it just happens to be one that I listened to recently, and they talk all about episode 1. And in fact, it's been great inspiration before coming on to this show, just because it was a fun memory to go back to.
Yeah.
But I love this idea, Jeff. That's a great idea. Kathleen Kennedy, we are talking to you specifically, all of our audience, but to you specifically.
Eyeball on the camera right there. You.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, I know you have a ton more ideas. Let's do one more before we wrap up for the night.
I feel like I want to do one that is really fun. I'm just gonna
Do it.
prime it, and I'll go to a real one. I would love to see a Jackson show, and if you don't know who Jackson is, he's if you go pick up like the Star Wars omnibus comics that came out right when the original comics, the comic books that came out right when Star Wars came out, there is a giant green rabbit that is
That's the Kevin Scott character, right?
Yes.
Yes.
He is a leppy smuggler. He looks kind of like Bugs Bunny and the Hulk merged together. He is a gigantic rabbit with giant rabbit ears, and he's green. He is hilarious. He's also really interesting in the comic books. He does appear in potentially like kind of a sad way, where you don't, he could be a goner, because he kind of makes an appearance in a Clone Wars episode. I actually have it down in my notes here. He appears in A Sunny Day in the Void. That he might actually appear there in a really weird way, but I would love to see a character like that in your Oddballs show. I would love to see kind of the group of smugglers that's in those early comic books, and hopefully that's something like you could really mine out a lot of these really great ideas from back in the day. But
before you get to that, I know I mentioned this before, but very much on that vein of like a point in time, like let's watch this story of one person. Boba Fett is getting Boba Fett gets a series.
The Book
and
of Fett.
It's called it's going to be in oh god, I forget what line it drops in, but it's going to be later this year, where it's called The War of the Bounty Hunters, where it's basically the story of Boba Fett getting Han Solo from Vader in Bespin and taking him to Jabba. Right. And in between those 2 points, a lot of other bounty hunters want that bounty, and they come after him. They're like, I want that bounty. How do I get that from Boba Fett? And some ish goes down between point A and point B, and it's a series. But the cool part about it is, even better than the fact that he's getting that series that'll run for, I think it's like 6 or 7 issues, is that they're doing crossovers with they're going to do crossovers with other series like Dr. Aphra and a few others, where those folks are also going to encounter him in this pathway to getting him back to Jabba's palace. So that's going to be super interesting, where they do that sort of like touch point. Okay, sorry. Your idea.
Oh, no. I really like that. I think that's also going to be a really great series. I will also say that another idea that I have is I would love to see a live action Shadows of the Empire, which also takes place during that time, and Dash Rendar is also involved, and there's a lot of let's try to steal Han back, and there is a kind of a Orion Syndicate, mixing my wars and my Trek here again, type of organization that they have to deal with. I love that there are these little pockets of time that are always these like lost years that I absolutely love, and I'm all about like, let's spend some time there, because that's kind of fun and mysterious. I like that they're taking the time to do that with Boba Fett. I would love to see Dash Rendar accidentally appear in that. I don't know if that's possible, but I'm a big Dash Rendar fan. The story though, and this goes back to a topic we were going to talk about a while ago, which was expanded universe characters that we would like to see kind of pop up. There is, and here's me going back in time again, and heck, it could even be merged with my prophecy idea. I would be on board. I am here for an XR Kun.
Oh,
show.
Dude, yes, 100%, 100%. Not just
And
Jedi Academy, like the ghost of in a temple, like the actual XR Kun. Yeah.
Yep. And by the way, merge that with the prophecy idea. Make it so that way it's all connected. Make it so that way people think that he's the prophecy. I think that dude brings a lot to the table. I really enjoy that story, and if someone could correct me if I'm wrong on this, I think he's the first person in Star Wars that is depicted as having a double-bladed lightsaber.
Yes.
It's a blue one. It's small. It's like this big. But it's really, really cool.
Actually,
I like that.
You're not only are you right, but he is called out. Exar Kun is called out specifically by Plagueis in the Plagueis novel, when Plagueis and Sidious are talking to each other about Maul, And Plagueis is like,
Yeah.
he's like, you allowed him to use the weapon of Exar Kun, and like has this very sort of like stoic, like, are you sure this is the right thing to be doing? Like of Sidious, and Sidious is like, he plays a role, like he just plays a part. But it's mentioned there that like he's not just using a double blade lightly. They don't just call it that. He's like, he specifically calls it, you're allowing him to use the weapon of Exar Kun. He call it like, there's that significance in that.
I remember, and we've talked about this, where it's like really great artwork can inspire action. And I remember seeing that picture. It's like Exar Kun, he's like, and he's got the lightsaber in his hand and it's double bladed. And I remember thinking, whoa, I was blown away by that. And I was like a kid when that came out, and I just was like, oh, I got to learn all about this guy. I think that his story is compelling. There is a fall from grace that's involved. There is, again, I like the two sides of the hero's journey. The one, and you see this in a lot of different things, not just Star Wars. You even see it in Legend of Zelda, where a hero is successful and becomes legend, and a hero fails and becomes a threat. And I like both sides of that coin. I think that when you tell those stories well, they could be done. It could be great. And by the way, these are also things that can be harvested in a companion movie. Just like how if we spend, 3 to 6 episodes with Exar Kun in an episode in a movie that is connected to that, we already have the build up there. We know what that character is, or if someone's referencing that character, now we're well connected. I think that you have a lot of potential with seeing something like that done in High Republic. I obviously this is before the High Republic, but I think that you could really have these tiny series that kind of act as chapters. Or, Jeff, you and I are in the business of training people, helping them build up their skills. We often will talk about a thing called pre-learning, which is a thing sometimes you need before you can start getting into the main thing that you want to learn about, like the prereqs, the stuff that help you get to that point. I would love some Disney Plus series on things like Exar Kun. I'd like to see something like Dash Rendar appear. And again, throwing it out there, Jackson, he's a giant green bunny.
I mean, what else do you have to say? Like, what else?
Exactly. Also, buy into more animation. Like all of these ideas too are they can be live action, they could be animation. I like animation because of the flexibility it gives you. Again, mixing that Trek side. I'm a huge fan of Lower Decks. I am a huge fan of Lower Decks. That's not just because Brad Boimler, like George Lucas, is born in Modesto. I am a huge fan of that because you can really engage with people. You can have a really great show. The production values can be simple because you can just animate all of your effects, and you can bring in actors that might be otherwise unavailable as voice talent.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, like what they've done too with Liam Neeson and things like.
Such a great example of that is Darth Maul. Like his character that is developed, not just like we see him throughout the Clone Wars series in various parts and pieces, and he's voiced by the same actor. I am blanking on the actor's name.
Peter
the voice.
That guy is amazing.
Yeah,
Peter Serafinowicz. Yeah, he's a great actor.
And then when they brought him back to do the voice and stuff in Rebels as well, like. It's partly like the scene in Rebels where he goes to Tatooine and he's looking for Kenobi, and like he's in the middle of the desert at night, and he is clearly like he's beyond just talking to himself. He's going a little cuckoo bananas, and he falls to the ground. He's like Kenobi and screams. Like there's actually a video out there of him in the studio doing that. And they went through a few iterations of and so they're finally like, just let loose, like you were just beyond pissed off. And so he does it, and to see his face, you're like, holy crap, dude! Like it you could feel the emotion. But with speaking of what you said about the animated stuff, and I think it was never more present for me than in I think it's the second to last episode of season 7 of the Clone Wars, where Ahsoka confronts Maul. Maul has never met her before. So even in the Clone Wars, he never actually encountered her directly. He encountered Anakin, not even Anakin. He encountered Obi-Wan and others, but never really encountered Ahsoka. So he encounters Ahsoka for the first time. He knows who she is and has heard of her, but he's never met her. And she actually, there's a quote from her when he meets her and says something like like, oh, your master never really taught you very well. Like, oh, you just seem like you're trying to kind of like, yeah, like the dark side user will, like trying to bait her a little. She goes, you'll find I have you'll find I have many qualities for you to dislike. And I'm like, I love her character. But no, when they start fighting, she pulls out her lightsabers, and she was almost going to join him, and then she pulls her lightsabers, and they go to fight. And he goes, I see that the student has one last lesson to learn. He pulls out his lightsaber and does his sort of thing. He pulls his hand back, and he lights it, and then he jumps at her like, what's the actor who played him in the movie? I'm blanking on his name. The British actor who actually played him didn't do
Ray Park.
Ray Park. Yeah, Ray Park.
Mm-hmm.
So he did like a Ray Park sort of like jump spin, the cartoon character did, or the anime character. Jump spin,
Right.
spinning the lightsaber around. Like, those sorts of things you watch in these animated series, and you're like, kind of like watching the intro credits or intro video to Star Wars: The Old Republic MMORPG that came out, in the early 2000s. And in the intro, when you see them fight that way, like, you get to watch this anime, you're like, oh, so there was a time when the Jedi and the Sith actually really knew how to use their physical skills in addition to the Force to have these sorts of things. Because when you watch the current movies that have been out in our generation, you're like, you guys don't look like you're very good at this. Like, I know people were on set who were supposed to like really teach you how to do sword fighting, but you watch it and like, I know it's supposed to look realistic, but it looks kind of just like not even like a good old Errol Flynn movie, but just kind of like, I hit and I hit and I hit. I'm like, I thought you guys were supposed to be really amazing with this, and the Force helps you like use these things. So for me, like, the animated series allows you to spend more time with elements of the story that can't not easily be recreated by a physical actor in a physical movie. And I think that's actually awesome, because great. So let that type of storytelling be done really effectively here, and do a different style of storytelling here. They don't have to be the same. We don't have to force one into the other. That's the beauty of the different mediums, animated, book, comic book, TV series, movie, is you can play with that and put them where they work the best to convey the story the way that you want to convey it in that way.
Yeah, and I think too, like, and this gets to the kind of the practical elements of production, where you'll hear people say that the stage is the actor's medium, and movies are the director's medium, and it just happens that television is the writer's medium. That you are able to do a lot in a writer's room in television. That most of the producers that you see that are on a show are usually writers that are in those rooms that are helping to craft those stories. And this is where I think that a lot of these ideas, and it's funny because we both gave ourselves the task of coming up with these ideas, and we're both coming up with series, because that's where you can spend more time as a writer. That's where you can craft a bigger story. You can craft more time for character stories, and of course, we're housing it in television. I really think that is a thing that if sometimes I'll talk about, you got to go spend your time in the wilderness, come back a little stronger. And I actually think Star Wars could stand a little bit of time in the wilderness.
Mm-hmm.
I think it can stand some time in mediums other than a movie.
Agreed.
Until they have a story, just like what you said at the start of this call, that they can have a story that they want to make some choices on, that they have a story they want to tell. Because otherwise, you could spend time with characters that you want to talk to. And by the way, that's what makes these stories so great. If you get the character-driven part of this down first, all the other stuff falls into place. Not the how good your actors are, or how good your effects are, or how great the direction or cinematography is. If you start with the characters first, it's great. Again, you see it in the Marvel stuff. You see it in The Mandalorian. Those are all character-driven pieces first. And I think that's why, for both you and I think that's why we started to really settle in these series, that these limited series might be the best place for Star Wars right now.
I totally agree with you. And on that note, I know we can go forever. And for the folks who have been with us live today, thank you so much for sticking with us. Hopefully this was fun for you. We love doing this. And we can easily go on. We can just make this live stream basically Ryan and I talking all day, and we'll just turn it on live every now and again. You can see what's going on, and we're just going to keep going. But thank you all. Thank you all so much for being here. We really appreciate it. If you get a chance, drop in and hit subscribe so you can keep up with all the new content. Ryan and I are actively working on some new sort of short form videos that we're hopefully going to be putting out here soon to talk about more Star Wars stuff, because we love series. We're going to do a bunch of shorter form stuff. So that's coming soon. Big thumbs up, like, appreciate it. That helps the channel out a lot. And we will be doing more giveaways. We actually just gave away a book to a viewer of the show here recently. It got shipped out today. So it was a copy of the new Thrawn series, book 1. The series is called Thrawn Ascendancy, named after the Chiss Ascendancy that he is part of. And the first book was called Chaos Rising. The next book actually comes out, I think, in like 2 weeks, which is super exciting. But we're going to be doing more giveaways of other things in the future, so stay tuned. Ryan, anything before we want to wrap up?
Nothing. Just of course, you can find me on Twitter at Ryan Rose. But always looking forward to connecting with you all every single week. Can't wait to make the mini videos on some stuff. I've got some fun things that we're going to be putting together. I know Jeff's working on some fun things that he's putting together. So yeah, this it's like an exciting time to be able to meet with all of you. So look forward to doing this again next week.
Absolutely. Thanks, everybody. Have an awesome night. We will see you soon.
Hey, bye, everybody.